Shabbat Shalom. So it's marathon weekend in New York City. What a great weekend to be a New Yorker, to be in the city, a time when our city transforms. The streets are filled with energy. Central Park, if you've walked through it in the last few days, has become a haven for dreamers, each one hoping to push past limits, to reach that goal of finishing a marathon. For days, runners from all around the world, young and old, seasoned athletes, weekend warriors, first-time marathoners, fill the city with that singular purpose of completing the race. We'll line the streets, we'll cheer for strangers as if they are family, lifting the runners with words of encouragement and celebration, lots of cowbells. Late into the afternoon, I always find this to be some of the more inspiring moments of the marathon, even when the elite runners have actually long after the elite runners have crossed the finish line. The city waits for those who struggle, those who straggle, those who stumble but refuse to give up. There's something deeply moving about it, a testament to resilience, to grit, and to the joy of community that we experience in this weekend. It reminds us what it means to come together, to see others through, and to choose hope and courage in the face of challenge. Around this time of year, I always think about one woman, Katherine Switzer, who in 1967 made history. She faced a choice between despair and hope. When she registered for the Boston Marathon, she did so with the dream of proving that women could compete alongside men in long-distance races. At the time, women were not allowed to run marathons in a competitive race. So she registers, I think, with a pseudonym, and she runs the first several miles with her hood up, right? She takes the hood down, and several miles into the race, with lots of miles ahead of her, the race director spots her. You can actually see pictures of this, and storms onto the course. He tried to pull her off, grabbing her arm, shouting that this was no place for women. Switzer had every reason to stop running. In that moment, she could have stepped aside. She could have conceded defeat, validating every belief that women weren't meant to be marathon runners, at least not in a competitive race. But she kept running, enduring the pain and the opposition, and she finished the race. It is, on this weekend, a story of hope, of refusing to let despair, anger, cynicism to sort of remain in that container that contains those three things, and other words you can imagine for the darkness of not being welcomed in a particular place. Even when the odds seemed impossible, she became in that moment the bearer of a message to so many that hope can prevail, that change is possible, and that with courage and grit, we can determine our own future. Now, this choice between hope and despair, between connection and isolation, is embedded in this week's Torah portion, where we read of Noah, and Kate described some of this, sending out two very different kinds of birds after the flood, the raven and the dove. Now, as the floodwaters recede, Noah releases the raven first. Because of its black feathers, its croaking call, its diet of carrion, the raven has long been considered an unkind bird. In the Jewish tradition, the raven represents, in the Kabbalistic and the mystical tradition, the attributes of aggression, of strength, not necessarily in a positive way, but sometimes, and sternness, survival. It flies back and forth, circling over the waters without resting. The Torah tells us that the raven kept going and returning, so it was coming in, it was coming out, until the waters dried upon the earth. At first, Noah believed that in a post-flood world, the raven's approach was necessary. Humanity, after all, had become morally corrupt, losing their sense of priorities, their moral compass. Now, Noah thought, civilization needs to begin anew, with the raven setting the tone. This new world order, because that's what it is, the world was destroyed except for Noah and his family, would need to be rooted in strictness, toughness, and discipline. Only through aggression and uncompromising judgment, he reasoned, could they prevent humanity from descending back into chaos. The dove, however, represents something different. In our tradition, it's seen as a creature of loyalty, of gentleness, of compassion. In the Song of Songs, the bride is compared to a dove. It represents our ability to believe in a future beyond the flood. When Noah releases the dove, it returns, unable to find a place to rest, as the world is still covered in water. He waits, he releases it a second time, and then he releases it again. The second time, the dove brings back an olive branch, the ultimate symbol of renewal and peace. The final time it's sent out, the dove does not return. The dove, it appears, has found a place to settle, a place to begin anew. Now, this short scene of Noah sending out the two birds, I think, communicates an essential truth for generations to come. After such destruction, like the destruction of the world in Noah's time, and in subsequent destructions that we will experience after this, the world must choose between the path of the raven, cynical and removed, and the path of the dove, seeking life and renewal. The raven represents an initial, almost natural response to trauma. It's the impulse to protect ourselves, to shut down, to harden ourselves against further hurt. After experiencing life's floods, whatever those floods might be, personal losses, tragedies, betrayals, we must, according to the raven approach, turn like the raven to isolation and mistrust. The raven's choice to circle around without landing symbolizes an inability to move forward, of bitterness, of resignation. There are times, to be sure, when this toughness is necessary, when we need boundaries and distance. But the raven, circling indefinitely, offers no path to rebuild a broken world. For that, Noah turns to the dove, which brings forth the olive branch, a sign of resilience, of hope. The dove reminds us that while boundaries and strength are needed, they cannot form the foundation of a renewed life. True recovery and healing can happen when we release the dove, when we choose kindness, compassion, hope, faith in the future. This choice resonates deeply in our times. Following the massacre of October 7th in Israel, the explosion of anti-Semitism around the world, Jews are caught between this need for strength, for protection, and the need to embody hope, which I believe is the essence of our people. That's the tension so many of us feel as we watch this ongoing war in Israel. And when I think about my son currently sitting in a tank somewhere in southern Lebanon, I, of course, worry about his physical safety all the time. I pray that all of the soldiers of the IDF return home safely. And I worry equally, maybe even more, about his soul and the souls of these extraordinary young men and women who have been fighting for months and months, some on their 4th or fifth call-up in reserves to protect the Jewish people. My revered teacher, Rabbi David Hartman, used to say that Israel takes these sweet boys and turns them into killers. Please, hear in that statement great pride that we have the ability to defend ourselves from those who seek to destroy us, a reality of modern Jewish history that Jews lacked for thousands of years living in the exile. And yes, hear in that statement concern about what war does to the souls of our young men and women. One of the gifts of Zionism is that we are the agents of our own destiny, and that agency can come with a cost unless we are vigilant about remembering and reflecting who we are, what we will do, and what we won't. And here I'm not only speaking to my son and his fellow soldiers, I'm speaking to myself, and I suspect many of you as well. Over a year later, I remain confident that this is a war that we must fight to protect our people and secure a future in the land of Israel. But if we allow ourselves to become solely defined by this conflict, if we become like the raven, hardened, suspicious, cynical, we risk losing sight of what makes us who we are. Jewish identity is not merely about survival. It's about embracing life, cherishing family, celebrating moments like this morning, and contributing to the world. The survivors of past tragedies, particularly those who lived through the Shoah, the Holocaust, faced the same choice. Despite experiencing unimaginable horrors, many chose to turn from the stance of the raven. They built new lives, they created new families, and they instilled in their children and their grandchildren a love of life and a deep-rooted hope in the future. The Torah's symbolism urges us to remember, though the raven's response to pain is understandable, at the end of the day, we need to send out the dove. We must look for the olive branch, the signals of life and of renewal that remind us we are capable of much more than just survival. It is the olive branch, after all, along with the menorah, that forms the official emblem of the State of Israel. Our world, like the streets of New York on Marathon Day, can be transformed when we choose to celebrate each other's resilience, when we choose to support rather than isolate, when we recognize that we can help each other reach the finish line. And that finish line for us is a world where we are defined not by our suffering, but by our compassion, our commitment to life, and our unwavering hope. May we be blessed to embody both birds, knowing when to stand strong, knowing when to fight, knowing when to protect, but ultimately choosing the way of the dove. Let us move forward with resilience and hope, allowing kindness to be the legacy that we leave behind. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for joining the Park Avenue Synagogue family. I hope you enjoyed the sermon. Please consider supporting our online community by scanning the QR code or by going to supportpas.org or by making a donation. Shalom and see you in Shul.